Part 1. Questions hanging above the rooftop. Min was born in a small town where a river wound through like a silk ribbon, embracing the green rice fields and the red-tiled roofs. In the mornings, roosters crowed in the distance like a call to rise, and in the afternoons, breezes from the fields carried the smell of freshly stacked straw into the backyards. On the old tiled roof of his family's home, there was a little terrace. That was Min's secret place, where he kept tiny cactus pots, a cheap pair of binoculars bought at the market, and a thick notebook with worn corners filled with endless questions. Why does grass always grow upward? Why does rainwater smell different from tap water? Why does darkness feel cold? The questions multiplied like tangled threads without beginning or end. But one question haunted him more than any other. Why is the sky blue, but the sunset red and orange? That question first appeared on a hot late summer noon, when Min sat barefoot on the rooftop, careful not to touch the scorching tiles, and gazed up at the sky as clear as glass. The blue seeped into his eyes, calm and deep. By evening, the sky began to change, like an artist mixing paint, adding yellow, brushing in orange, suddenly glowing bright, and then quietly fading into purple. Min once asked his grandmother in the kitchen. She was washing vegetables, her wrinkled hands like dried riverbeds. She chuckled. I wondered the same when I was young. They say it's because of sunlight, child. Sunlight has many colors. In the evening, red travels farther. Then she bent back to her work, leaving Min leaning against the wooden post, heart buzzing. Travels farther. Those words dangled in his mind like a rope thrown toward the sky, catching on as something out of reach. He asked his science teacher, Mr. Tan. The teacher said, "Try this. Shine sunlight through a glass of water with a little milk stirred in." Then he smiled behind his thick glasses. Science is about looking and trying. At home, Min followed. He placed a glass of water on the table, dropped in a bit of milk, and stirred gently. When sunlight slanted through the window, something strange happened. The beam turned hazy, full of tiny specks like dust floating inside. The light didn't look like a rainbow, but it changed. Min scribbled in his notebook. Sunlight through milky water turns hazy. Is the sky the same? That afternoon, Min climbed back to the terrace. The town below was a tapestry of sounds. Rattling bicycle chains, the street vendor's call, children shouting in the soccer field, and the hiss of wind scraping rooftops. Clouds swelled white like cotton. One drifted over the sun, shading the neighbor's yard, where a black cat stretched out lazily. Min set his palm on the warm tile, opened his notebook, and flipped to an old page. There he had sketched a prism with arrows splitting sunlight into colors, copied from a library book. Beneath it, he had written, "Sunlight is not a single color. It has red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. But the sky looks blue." He raised his binoculars. The cheap lenses blurred the edges, but still, Min loved the feeling of pulling the sky closer. He swept across rooftops, over the giant almond tree, toward a kite floating high. The kite was crimson, shaped like a swallow. Its strings stretched taut, disappearing into the hand of a boy below. Min lowered the binoculars, remembering when he flew kites with his father at the start of the windy season. His father had laughed, squinting into the sun. A kite only flies when the wind is against it. Those words returned often since his father left for work far away, like an invisible kite string tugging in Min's chest whenever he faced something difficult. The sky was still blue, so blue that if he could touch it, he thought it would be cool and smell like wind. so wide it could swallow their tiny town whole. And at sunset, men could never forget the sky sometimes seemed to burn. Red and orange spilled across the horizon, pouring fire into the river until the water looked aflame. His mother often stood on the porch then, a bundle of herbs in hand, gazing at the sky before heading into the kitchen. Min sensed she was remembering something far away. Maybe she was listening for his father's footsteps on the threshold, or recalling the smoke of her own childhood home. Every time the sky changed color, people seemed to fall silent, as if glimpsing something unspeakable. Min wrote in bold letters, "Why blue sky? Why red sunset?" He drew two squares, one labeled noon, the other evening. He wanted to chart something, but his pencil hesitated, uncertain of the name. To him, the terrace was a laboratory. No test tubes, no microscope, just jars of water, a shard of broken glass, and pieces of mirror. He once angled sunlight with a mirror shard, projecting a razor-thin beam onto the wall. Another time, he placed a glass of water in the beam, tilting it until faint rainbow streaks spread on the table. Light can split apart, Min wrote. It definitely has many colors. One day, storm clouds gathered. The air smelled of damp soil, and the first drops drummed on tin roofs. His mother called him down, but he stayed to feel the rain. Lightning slashed purple across the sky. Then sunshine broke through the drizzle. And suddenly, a rainbow, not just a picture in books, but arching across the town from the old temple roof to the riverbank, its colors sewn like threads in the sky. Min nearly dropped his binoculars, breath hammering. So the colors were always in sunlight, he realized, but hidden. That night, Min copied a word from his teacher, scattering. Light, when hitting tiny air molecules, scattered in all directions. He didn't fully understand, but he liked the sound of the word, like a spinning top whirring in his chest. And when the sun set in a blaze of orange fire, a feather floated down from nowhere, soft and white, landing at his feet. His friend Lon, who had joined him, picked it up, probably from old Mr. Nom's pigeons. Min nodded, but in his heart, he thought he heard a whisper in the feather itself. Keep asking. That night, lying awake, he opened his notebook again. He drew a line for a sunbeam, tiny dots for molecules in the air, and arrows scattering blue light away. Then he drew a longer path for evening sunlight, passing through more air, scattering all the blue away, leaving red to reach the eye. Beneath the drawing, he wrote, "Not the full answer. Need more experiments. Borrow candle. Ask about wavelength." He added one more line, as if to remind his future self. Science is to look, ask, try, and then ask again. When he finally turned off his lamp, he thought he heard a faint voice drifting through the night. "My name is Luma. When you're ready, call me with light." Min blinked, then laughed softly. Maybe it was just a dream. But deep down, he knew the answer to his question was no longer only in books. It was all around him, in the beam of a flashlight through cloudy water, in a pigeon's feather, in his mother's smile, in a harmonica's tune, and in the vast sky above. And so, the story of Min, with his questions hanging above the rooftop, was only just beginning. Part 2. The companion of light the following morning. Min woke with sunlight pressing warmly against his eyelids. It was still early, and the town was wrapped in a thin blanket of mist. Dew glistened on the roof tiles, and the air smelled fresh, like the pages of a book just opened. He hurried to his laboratory on the rooftop. The glass jar from yesterday, with the flowery water still cloudy, waited patiently in its corner. Min uncovered it and held it up to the sun. Dusty beams scattered inside like tiny dancers caught in invisible currents. He smiled. Something was taking shape in his mind, though not yet clear. But his thoughts kept circling back to the name whispered in his half-sleep. Luma. Was it a dream? Or something else? The feathers still lay on his desk, soft and pale, as if daring him to believe. That afternoon, he decided to repeat the candle experiment from the book. He waited until his mother and grandmother were busy in the kitchen, then sneaked a small candle stub to the rooftop. Placing it behind the milky jar of water, he lit the wick. The flame flickered yellow-orange. When Min looked at it through the side of the jar, his heart raced. The flame seemed redder, dimmer, as if the water had stolen its blue away. He scribbled in his notebook, confirmed. Light changes when scattered. Suddenly, a breeze swept across the terrace, strong enough to ruffle the pages. The feather lifted and spun in midair. Min reached for it, but before his fingers closed, he heard a voice, soft, ringing, like sunlight turned into sound. You called me. I am here. Minh for The feather hovered, glowing faintly. A shape began to shimmer around it. A small figure, no bigger than a sparrow, woven from threads of light. It had wings that sparkled like broken glass in the sun, and eyes that glowed with warmth. I am Luma, the figure said, a child of light. You have questions. I can guide you. Min's mouth went dry. You're real. Luma tilted its head, smiling. As real as the sky you look at, as real as scattering colors in water. Min blinked, then burst out. Why is the sky blue? Why is the sunset red? I've been trying to understand. The little being's wings trembled. You're close. But answers live not only in words, they live in journeys. And so began Min's strangest adventure. That evening, as the sky deepened into orange and gold, Luma beckoned. Come. The air shimmered, and suddenly Min felt weightless. The rooftop fell away, the town shrinking beneath his feet. He gasped as they rose into the air, carried on a stream of light itself. The rooftops became toy blocks, the river a ribbon of silver. Don't be afraid, Luma whispered. The sky is wide, but it welcomes those who ask. Min's heart pounded with a mix of fear and wonder. The higher they climbed, the bluer the sky became, until it seemed almost solid, like an ocean flipped upside down. Around him, light swirled in invisible currents. He stretched his hand out and thought he could feel threads of color brushing his skin. Luma gestured. Look closely, and Min did. Through the blue air, he saw something strange. Countless tiny motes, invisible from the ground, now danced around him like dust in a sunbeam. Light struck them, scattering in bursts of color. The shorter, bluer waves bounced wildly in all directions, filling the sky with their glow. The longer, redder waves streamed straighter, slipping through the haze. Mingape. So that's why. The blue light gets scattered everywhere. That's why the whole sky looks blue. Luma's eyes gleamed. Yes, and when the sun sinks lower, light must travel farther through the air. The blue and green are scattered away before reaching you. What remains, the strong, steady red and orange, paints the horizon. Min's heart leapt. It was exactly what he had begun to imagine. But here, in the middle of the sky, he could see it happening. He twirled around, laughing with sheer amazement. They drifted higher, where the air thinned and the world curved below. The sunset was blazing now, casting rivers of fire across the clouds. Min stared in silence. He felt very small, yet somehow connected to something vast. Luma's voice grew gentle. The sky is not only science, it is also story. Each scattering of light is a whisper, each color a memory. If you listen, you will find more than answers. You will find meaning. Min clutched his notebook tightly against his chest. His questions were opening doors, and beyond those doors stretched not just knowledge, but wonder. The first journey had only just begun. Part 3. Through the veil of night, the last glimmers of sunset faded behind them as Min and Luma drifted higher. The fire of the horizon softened into violet, then into deep indigo. The town below was wrapped in night. The river now only a dark ribbon reflecting pinpricks of light from lanterns and windows. Minh Shiva. The air was cooler here and quieter, as if the world itself was holding its breath. He looked up and gasped. The sky was no longer empty blue, but a vast, endless tapestry stitched with stars. Thousands, tens of thousands, each shimmering with its own story. Luma hovered beside him, wings humming softly like plucked strings. "This is the veil of night," it whispered. "Many think darkness means the end of light. But in truth, night is full of light, scattered, distant, patient." Min's eyes widened. "Those are suns? Like our sun?" "Yes," Loomis said, voice glowing with pride. "Each one a star, burning across the emptiness. Their light travels for ages, scattered by dust and gas before reaching your eyes." Minh Chet Titan. The idea was too big, almost impossible to hold. "So, when I look at the stars, I'm looking into the past." "You are," said Luma. "Some of these lights began their journey long before your town, your river, your family's roof were ever born." The thought made Min dizzy. He hugged his notebook to steady himself. He had always believed the night was silence and shadow, but now he saw it was alive, alive with messages carried across centuries. Just then a wind stirred, not the gentle breath of evening, but a rushing current, colder, sharper. The stars above seemed to blur. A shadow slid across the sky like spilled ink. "Minshaskin Pika." "What's happening?" he whispered. Luma's glow dimmed slightly. "It is the veil of darkness. It comes when doubt grows too heavy." The shadow thickened, swirling like storm clouds without rain. From within it, a voice rose, low, echoing, heavy with mockery. "Questions, questions, always questions. Little boy, you will never find all the answers. The sky is endless. You are small. Give up." Minh Shathuat Titan. The voice pressed into his chest, cold as winter water. For a heartbeat, he thought of turning back, of curling into his bed where the world was safe and simple. But then, faintly, he heard his father's words in memory. "A kite only flies when the wind is against it." Min clenched his fists. "I am small," he shouted into the swirling dark. "But my questions are bigger than you." The darkness hissed, recoiling slightly. Luma's glow flared again, wings scattering sparks. "Well said, Seeker." Together they pushed onward. Luma stretched out its tiny hands, and beams of light unfurled like threads of dawn. Min lifted his notebook, holding it open. The words and drawings he had written began to shimmer, as if the ink itself remembered his wonder. The shadow thinned, unraveling. The stars returned, brighter than before, as if applauding. Panting, Min looked around. Was that real? As real as doubt itself, Luma answered gently. Every journey of light meets shadows. But questions, honest, burning questions, are lanterns strong enough to keep you moving. Min pressed his notebook to his chest again, feeling its warmth. He realized now that knowledge was not a straight road, but a path through both wonder and fear. And maybe, just maybe, both were necessary. Far below, the horizon glowed faintly with the last ember of sunset. Far above, the Milky Way stretched across the sky like a river of light. Min felt caught between two infinities, and for the first time, he wasn't afraid. Luma's eyes sparkled. Are you ready for the next step? Minh not that family. Show me more. And with that, they soared deeper into the night sky. Part 4. The trial of storms. The night sky carried them higher still, but soon the air around Min began to shift. The stars overhead blurred, swallowed by a rising wall of mist. A distant rumble rolled across the heavens, low and heavy, like a drumbeat from the belly of the earth. Min clutched his notebook tighter. What's happening now? Luma's wings flickered uneasily. We are entering the realm of storms. Here, light is tested against clouds, rain, and thunder. The mist thickened into towering clouds, their edges glowing faintly in the starlight. Lightning flashed within, jagged and blinding, splitting the dark into stark white for a heartbeat. Thunder followed, loud enough to shake Min's chest. He flinched. A voice boomed out of the clouds, deep, roaring, nothing like the whisper of the earlier darkness. Little seeker, you think you understand light? Then face me, the storm, where light bends, breaks, and scatters beyond your control. The clouds swirled open, releasing torrents of rain. Droplets hammered Min's skin like icy needles, drenching his clothes. He struggled to keep his eyes open as the wind roared in his ears. Hold fast, cried Luma, darting through the sheets of water. Do not fight the storm. Watch it. Min forced himself to breathe, to lift his head despite the sting of rain. And then, in the distance, something extraordinary appeared. A curve of colors arched faintly against the black. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. A rainbow, glowing in the storm's very heart. Mingapet. It's here even at night. Light is never gone, Luma shouted over the wind. The storm only reveals its secrets differently. Each drop of water bends sunlight, splitting it into all its hidden hues. That is why rainbows are born. The rainbow brightened, stretching wider until it seemed to span the entire sky. The storm's voice roared again, but rainbows fade. They vanish as quickly as they come. What worth is beauty so fleeting? Min steadied himself, his hair plastered to his forehead. He thought of the sunsets he loved, the rainbow after the summer rain, the colors dancing in his glass of water. He raised his voice, because beauty doesn't need to last forever to matter. It matters because it makes us see. The rainbow flared brilliantly, scattering shards of light across the storm. The clouds shuddered, breaking apart under the weight of color. Rain slowed, then stopped. The storm's roar dwindled into a sigh. Ming bolin get. The air cleared, and stars shone again, more dazzling for their brief absence. The rainbow lingered one last moment, then dissolved like a smile. Luma hovered near, glowing brighter than ever. You have passed the trial. You did not only survive the storm, you learned from it. Min's chest swelled with pride and awe. He glanced at his soaked notebook, worried the pages had blurred. But to his surprise, the ink shimmered intact, as if protected by the storm itself. On one page, words glowed, light bends, light scatters, light reveals. As the night deepened, They drifted onward, the storm now only a memory. Beneath them, the world lay silent, washed clean. Above them, the Milky Way curved in a silver arc, beckoning. Luma's voice was soft again, like a lullaby. Ahead lies the final truth, where the edge of night meets the beginning of dawn. Min's heart leapt. He knew another question waited there, burning brighter than all before. And so, he tightened his grip on his notebook, ready for whatever came next. The night stretched long and deep, but Min and Luma kept gliding forward, carried on invisible currents of light. Below, the town slept, roofs dark and silent, the river a streak of black glass. Above, stars wheeled slowly, like an ancient clock marking time. Then, far to the east, the darkness began to thin. A faint glow touched the horizon, so soft that at first Min thought he imagined it. But the glow grew, spilling upward like the first brushstroke of a painter's hand. Min's breath caught. Is that dawn? Yes, Luma whispered, its wings trembling. The place where night surrenders and day is born again. They drifted closer. The stars near the horizon winked out, fading one by one. The sky shifted in color, deep indigo melting into violet, then into soft blue. It was as if the heavens themselves were exhaling after a long sleep. Luma gestured with a tiny hand. Watch carefully. This is the sky's greatest lesson. Min stared wide-eyed. The glow brightened, spilling gold, and rose across the clouds. The first edge of the sun peaked above the land, and beams of light shot outward, scattering through the thick morning air. The sky blushed, pink, orange, and then the familiar blue, reborn. Min felt the answer unfurl in his chest. So at dawn, the same thing happens as sunset. The light travels through more air, scattering away the blues, letting reds and oranges paint the sky. And then, as the sun climbs higher, the blue returns, scattered everywhere again. Luma's eyes gleamed. Yes, you have seen the cycle. Blue at midday, red at the edges, shifting hues as the day turns. This is the dance of light with air, a dance older than time. Min clutched his notebook. He wanted to capture every shade, every change. But no pencil seemed enough. For the first time, he realized that knowledge was not only about answers written down, it was about witnessing, about being present when the sky whispered its secrets. As the sun lifted higher, warmth spread across his skin. The rooftops of his town glowed golden, and thin threads of smoke curled upward from morning fires. Somewhere a rooster crowed. Life was beginning again. Min turned to Luma. Thank you for showing me. The little being tilted its head, smiling. I'll only open the door. You walk through it. Remember, Min, the sky will never stop changing. Neither will your questions. That is the gift of seeking. For a moment, Min feared this meant goodbye. Will you leave me? Luma's wings shimmered. I will always be here. In the scatter of light, in the colors of dawn and dusk, in every question you dare to ask. Call me, and I will answer. The figure of light began to dissolve, threads unwinding back into the morning sun. The feather Min had kept on his desk drifted down once more, landing softly in his hand. Min held it close, his heart both heavy and bright. He looked at the sky, now fully blue again, and whispered, I'll keep asking. Always. The wind carried his words upward, scattering them into the endless expanse, like light itself, traveling farther than he could ever see. Part 6. Returning to Earth when Min opened his eyes again, he was back on his rooftop. The morning sun was already climbing, spilling gold across the tiles. Birds darted between rooftops, chirping wildly as if celebrating the new day. His clothes were dry, though he remembered the soaking rain of the storm vividly. The feather lay in his hand, soft and real. For a long moment, Min just sat there, blinking at the ordinary world. The pots of cactus were still in their corners. His little jar of milky water stood where he'd left it. The hum of daily life rose from below, a vendor calling out breakfast, the clatter of bicycle bells, the familiar hiss of the kettle in his mother's kitchen. It almost felt as if nothing had happened. Almost. Min touched his notebook. The pages bore proof. Sketches of scattering light, scribbled notes about rainbows, and faint shimmers of ink that hadn't been there before. The journey was real, and even if Luma had dissolved into sunlight, its voice echoed inside him. Keep asking. Downstairs, his grandmother spotted the feather still clutched in his hand. "Where did you get that?" she asked. "Min my Li, a gift from the sky." She chuckled, shaking her head. "Your imagination is bigger than this house." But Min knew it wasn't just imagination. That afternoon, he called his friend Lon over. Together, they sat on the rooftop as he explained everything. The scattering of blue, the red of sunset, the rainbow born inside raindrops. Lon listened with wide eyes, then burst out laughing. "So, the sky is basically one huge experiment?" she asked. "Yes," Min said, face lighting up. "Every day, it shows us something new. You just have to notice." Lon leaned back, gazing at the vast blue overhead. "Then we should start our own experiments. A rooftop science club." The idea made Min laugh, but he nodded eagerly. Together, they tried the candle trick, the jar of milky water, even mirrors to split sunlight. Their laughter rose above the rooftops, mingling with the cries of swallows darting in the air. Later that evening, as the sun lowered, Min's mother came out to the porch. She found him sketching the sky again. The colors shifted from blue to orange, just as he had explained. She tilted her head. "So you finally figured it out?" Min closed his notebook gently. "Yes, Mama. The sky told me itself." She smiled, brushing his hair back. "Then one day, you must tell it back in your own way." Min glanced upward, the sky glowing red-orange, just as it had at the start of his questions. He held the feather close to his heart. Somewhere in the scattering light, he thought he heard a faint laugh, a shimmer of wings. And he knew this was not an ending, but the beginning of endless stories, endless questions. The sky would keep changing, and he would keep asking. Part 7. The endless sky days passed. Min kept climbing to his rooftop, notebook in hand, his eyes tracing every shade of the sky. Sometimes it was the pure, piercing blue of midday. Sometimes it was streaked with drifting clouds, soft and silver. Sometimes it burned with the fierce orange of dusk, and sometimes it shimmered with the faintest violet before stars appeared. Every time, Min wrote. He wrote about scattering, about rainbows, about light's hidden journey through air and water. But more than science, he wrote about feelings, how the blue sky made him dream, how sunsets made his chest ache with beauty, how rainbows reminded him that even storms held color within. One afternoon, Lon teased him. "Your notebook is going to burst with questions one day." Min only grinned. "Then I'll start another." His grandmother, watching him scribble with furrowed brows, said softly, "Your father was the same when he was your age. Always staring at the sky, always asking why." Min paused, startled, then felt warmth bloom in his chest. Perhaps curiosity ran in his family like a secret inheritance. At night, he often sat by his window, feather beside him, listening to the hum of crickets. Sometimes he thought he heard a faint rustle, the echo of Luma's wings, hidden in the starlight. And whenever doubt crept in, he reminded himself, questions are lanterns. One evening, as the sun dipped low, his mother joined him on the porch. Together, they watched the sky melt from blue to gold to crimson. She said quietly, "You know, people have looked at sunsets for thousands of years. Some prayed, some painted, some wrote poems. And now you ask the sky questions. Minh not det sklau. Maybe all of that is the same thing." She smiled. Maybe it is. The horizon blazed red-orange, scattering light across the river. Min opened his notebook, but this time he didn't draw or write. He simply watched, letting the colors soak into his memory. He realized then that the sky was more than a puzzle to solve. It was a story told fresh every day, with sunlight as its ink and the air as its page. And he was not only a reader of that story, but a part of it. As the last light faded, Min whispered a promise to himself. "I'll never stop asking. I'll never stop looking up." Above him, the first stars emerged, patient and eternal. The sky, vast and endless, scattered its secrets across time. And in that moment, Min knew his journey had only just begun.